Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries and brokers from across the country and even in your town. The Great Resignation's on a lot of people's mind and in the news, and we're going to talk about that today. Joining me on this segment is Leslie Kuban. Leslie, welcome to the program.
I'm so happy to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Leslie, tell us a little bit about your work, the name of your firm, and specifically, who are the types of folks that you help?
Might be my pleasure. So the name of my company is called Frannet, and I am one of the market presidents of Frannet. I reside in the Atlanta market, but we're actually a nationwide consulting firm helping people find businesses to buy. And we dominantly work in the franchising space. We find that, especially for first-time entrepreneurs who've never owned their own business and are looking to do something new and different, one of the thousands of good franchise brands out there can be a great segue into entrepreneurship for the first time. And we're helping people evaluate businesses that meet their needs and goals. And sometimes that's an existing franchise that is already up and running that they're acquiring from someone who's retiring or needing to leave their business. And sometimes it's acquiring new franchise licenses for ABC brand. And sometimes it's both. So many of our clients are entrepreneurs looking to expand their portfolio of businesses, or multi-unit owners looking to expand their franchising empire, or corporate executives who are looking to bridge out of their corporate career or just step full-time into entrepreneurship.
In the news, we're hearing a lot about the Great Resignation today, and I'm sure people aren't just resigning to do nothing. They're probably resigning to do something else. How has this affected your industry? Have you seen an uptick of folks wanting to leave the Dilbert cube and perhaps go off on their own and find a franchise?
These last 2 years have been two of the busiest in my 20-year career history in brokerage. It was interesting, March 2020, everything just stopped. The world stopped, and our business did too. But come May, the spigot turned on with people. They've been at home for a bit at that point. They got used to having dinner with their families, not being on airplanes or commuting in traffic, and having a bit more command over their schedule. They got used to that independence and autonomy and didn't want to give it up. So the interest in entrepreneurship, franchising and otherwise, it's just spiked like I've never seen it over the last couple of years.
And who knew? It seems very counterintuitive, and that leads to my next question, the elephant in the room. Is it really a safe time to go into business, or is it a good time to buy a business now?
I think that there's different ways to look at that, Mark. Let's take the cautionary side of things first. The labor market it's always been challenging. I mean, it's never been the easy part of entrepreneurship, but it's a lot more challenging now. So I think people need to be aware that we're all in a state of flux on figuring out how to, in a new world, attract, retain, advance labor for our businesses' needs. But at the same time, it's really interesting, speaking to franchising, some of the highest growth areas are the ones that were hardest hit by COVID, because it forced enormous innovation, investment in technology, re-engineering of business models to meet new consumer needs that need to be delivered in a new way. And so this is where franchising really stepped up, and an even further separation in terms of risk and success is the ability to quickly, in a matter of weeks or even days, deploy the resources in talent and capital to re-engineer business models overnight.
So with more and more people coming into the market now and really taking it more serious about going into business for themselves, I'd imagine people leaving the corporate world, it's their first time starting a business oftentimes, so they must have a lot of questions and they don't even know what they don't know, so it's hard to know what to ask. So my question to you is, what kind of questions do you get asked from folks reaching out to you for the first time, maybe looking for a business for the first time?
Yeah, they want to understand. They're scared and nervous, rightfully so. This is something new and different, which can be extremely exciting, but also cannot go the right way if you don't take a thoughtful and educated approach. So, it's time, money, and experience. Mark, those are the questions that people start asking. What is out there in the sea of opportunities? And furthermore, what would make sense for me based on my talents, based on what I'm interested in? What kind of capital requirements is it going to take for me to buy a business? What are my funding solutions? And what kind of time is it going to take? And I think, out of all of those, experience and money are not usually the disqualifiers for people, but it might be time that could be a factor. And again, I'm speaking from the world of franchising, is there are definitely semi-passive investments that are great side ventures for people to grow over a number of years, but they still take some time. I think that word passive is one that I stay away from. So people need to have some time, maybe not all of their time, to put into business. And some franchise models require an owner to be all in. So I think people have to be really honest about their time availability to set themselves up for success.
So speaking about franchising, what makes franchising such an appealing option? Going into business for the first time, what are some of the benefits of working a franchise model as opposed to starting something from scratch?
I mean, I can sum it up in risk reduction. At the same time, enjoying some competitive advantages, Mark. So, some of these franchise brands, they've been out there for 5, 10, 15 more years, developing their systems, refining their systems. And a person investigating these opportunities is going to go through a due diligence process where they are going to get exposed to how these systems work. They are invited and often required to go out and spend time with the existing franchise owners of the brand who are already invested their time, their capital. And franchisees will tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there's no crystal ball in anything, but this is the closest I've seen where prospective new entrepreneurs can get the real skinny from people who are already running these businesses about what works, what you need to be prepared for, what you need to be honest with yourself about, what kind of money it takes, what kind of growth trajectory can you expect, what are the challenges, and what are the benefits of the franchise system. So I think the ability to conduct real due diligence and the ability to shortcut some of the startup pains, because a lot of the systems, the vendors, preferred pricing, how to market this business. I mean, the franchise doesn't do the work for you, but they've covered a lot of startup bases that a new franchise owner then doesn't have to put the time or capital into creating it all themselves.
Speaking of the good, bad, and the ugly, have you seen folks, when they're researching on the web about franchising and going into business for the first time, there's a lot of information out there, information overload. So there must be some big myths or misconceptions that you might hear out there. What are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions around franchising that you hear?
Oh my gosh, the top. So I helped co-author a book called More Than Just French Fries. And the genesis for this book is the biggest misperception that I hear and have to, it's my opportunity to provide education every day, which is that it's all food. And I understand that perception because we think of McDonald's and Subway, and those are very large and visible, well-known legacy franchises. So that's what people where their mind it tends to go. But some of the best categories that I'm seeing great success in that are not food are in pet-related services, in home improvement services, in business-to-business services like marketing services and IT services and staffing services. Healthcare, there's some really amazing franchise brands in the healthcare space. So it's not all food, folks. So and food is great, it's just not everybody's cup of tea. So there are many, many industries where people will find good choices. And I think the second would be that the franchisor runs your business for you. And I want to be really clear about that. When you buy into a franchise, you are still running your business. You're the one hiring your employees. You're the one providing the level of customer service that's going to impact your success. So the franchisor is providing coaching and the toolbox on how to do it. but they're not doing it for you. And I think there's a important distinction to make there.
And the franchisor is really building the brand. That's their responsibility, and it's the individual franchisee's responsibility to build their business.
It is, but I think the franchisor definitely has the franchisor has, in order to build the brand, they have a responsibility to the success of their franchisees. I just said they're not running it for them, but it is, on their, they need to be delivering what they promise that they're delivering in the way of training, in the way of advancements in technology, in the way of having the right talent and financial war chest to be able to continue to grow their support resources as they bring on more franchisees. So I think that there's definitely, the franchisor has a lot of responsibility there as well, if you ask me.
That's a great distinction. Great distinction. Leslie, what inspired you to get into, brokering franchises, and, how did you get started?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. So my journey in franchising began in the mid 90s. I was straight out of college, and my first venture was with a UPS store franchise, although back then it was called Mailboxes, et cetera.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. And when in North America, when Mailboxes was about 3,000 units strong, UPS then acquired us as their retail strategy. And I was straight out of college. And I got to tell you, if I can do it as a 23-year-old who really had no prior business experience, I think that demonstrates that anybody can do it. But the reason was MBE did a great job of teaching me how to run my own business, not just how to run their business, but how to run a small business. And I got into it at the encouragement of my father. About 10 years prior, he had been in the corporate world. He was a sales executive at a big company, and division mergers impacted his job, which had him say, I don't really have control. Even though I'm successful, I don't really have control. And that was his trigger to see, what could I do on my own? And he also recognized he wasn't the visionary entrepreneur with his own idea to start his own venture. So research led him to franchising. So our family had been in franchising, in sign production, and in photo finishing for about 10 years during my growing up years. So I worked in some of these businesses. So I was a little bit predisposed, but my dad really encouraged me to, go your own, just skip the whole work for somebody else thing, go into your own business. And franchising was a pathway to help me to do that. But, the Mailboxes, et cetera, opportunity was just kind of there. I didn't put a lot of thought into it, and it was a great experience. But after a couple of years, I recognized, I'm like, this is really not the long-term place for me. And I think it was just stars aligning that we got introduced to a business and franchise brokerage organization, Frannet, that helped people take a thoughtful process through why you're going to choose the business that you're going into. And it really just struck me. It's like, wow, this all worked out for me with Mailboxes, but I never went through a process like that. And I can really see the benefit of someone, besides, rather than just choosing something because it's a big brand and you perceive it to be successful, it's always busy, really understanding what it's going to take to be the owner of that business. I did not benefit from that. So I definitely saw how other people could, which is what led me into consulting and brokerage, where I've now been for 20 years.
Leslie, before I ask you my last question, is there anything that I didn't think to ask that you'd like to share in the importance of franchising, or in regards to franchising?
Yeah, I'd say that as people start to think about this, they're not a lone ranger in this. Like, before you go down the road of spending a lot of time investigating a franchise to own, number one, ask your spouse. Ask your spouse if they are on board with this, if this is something that's vastly different than you've done before, and include him or include her in the process. And also remember that it's a two-way street, that good franchises are going to qualify their candidates just as carefully as candidates are going to qualify what franchise they want to own. And good brands will say no to people who they feel are not going to succeed in their model. And that's a good thing. So just just be prepared that it's kind of a mutual interview and it's not a one-way street.
And for folks that are listening now that would love to speak with you, interested in looking into franchising or leaving their Dilbert cube themselves now, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
I am most active on LinkedIn for my business. So my name is Leslie Kuban, Kuban with a K, and I'm the only one out there. So that would be the best place to find me and connect with me is on LinkedIn.
Leslie, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
You as well, Mark, and thank you for having me.
That was Leslie Kuban with Frannet, and this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.